Welcome back to another episode of Movified. I'm your host, Mark Hershey, with Salmon's Moving and Stores, located in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. Today, we are jumping back over that pond over to Northern England, where we have Patrick McCrory from the McCrory Removals, a moving company that is very well known for transporting household goods. And we're going to jump into all kinds of things that they've moved over the years, but they've been around for over 50 years. So thank you so much, Patrick, for coming on the show, and welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. You know, just before we started hitting record, Patrick was kind of diving already into the beginnings of when he got started in the moving company. And what kind of trucks were you having to run? How are you operating? Like, how did it go? Like when we're backing up 50 years. So we're looking back in the around the 70s.
Yes. The first vehicle that I got was a van, really. I've been to America, but I haven't never been to Canada. But I have a feeling that the same thing applies, where we have two countries divided by the same language. So there's some things that don't always translate exactly. I can understand that. But you do use the word van, I imagine.
Sure, yes.
Yeah. But a van for us is not a heavy goods vehicle, so it's not a lorry, or you would say a truck. And that was what's called a Luton van. So it has a little bit over the cab. It's like a box with a bit. So in this part of the world, we call them Luton vehicles.
Luton vehicles. All right.
It was a Ford Thames. It predated the Ford Transit, and it really did have a starting handle. You know, where you could, if the battery is flat, you could turn this handle at the front.
That's how you got moving?
Yes.
By turning the handle?
Yes.
Wow.
That wasn't an everyday thing, but if your battery was flat, then that would work. It's the equivalent of pushing the vehicle or towing the vehicle.
But instead, you're just cranking this wheel to give it a little bit of energy.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you know,
I only can imagine what it would be like if you had a lot of furniture in the back of the truck and now you're trying to crank this thing to get it moving.
It wouldn't move. It's just the engine would turn.
Okay.
It wouldn't be in gear. So you'd just be starting the engine. It was very efficient. It was a very good idea, really. And sometimes when I lose patience with all the electronics that we have now, I would say to the garage, as you said, the repairers, why did we have to get rid of the starting handle? You know, it was
sure.
But I've worked it out. I think one of the reasons, there's a number of reasons. One of the reasons was that vehicles have become, the engines are now, I think, what are called transverse. It means the engine runs across with cars anyway. And of course, the starting handle would have been at the front. Now the starting handle would have to come out where the wheel arch is, because of the way the engine runs across. That's just one reason.
You know, and talking about these type of trucks, I can imagine your equipment also has probably evolved over the years from considering what a four-wheeler was looking like now. You know, a nice piece of plywood and you know, 4 nice casters with a carpet rug on there, compared to probably just a sheet of wood and some crooked old wheels on the bottom to try and transport it. Or how were you transporting goods back then when you started? And do you have any kind of fun stories of, you know, showing up at a home and being like, oh, this is way too above our pay grade?
When I decided to try MoverMarketing.ai social media posting service, I wasn't sure what to expect, but they really surprised me. They were able to capture the essence of my company's brand with professional and perfectly crafted content. Now they manage my social media, posting tips, reviews, and relevant content while I get to focus on my business. For just $300 a month and no long-term contracts, I enjoy peace of mind and strong digital presence without any of the hassle. If managing social media feels overwhelming, I 100% recommend MoverMarketing.ai's social media posting service. You won't regret it. Just go to MoverMarketing.ai/deal and fill out your information and get your free week of social media posts exclusive for Movified listeners. You won't regret it.
your moving software does the basics, but have you seen SuperMove? It's the most comprehensive solution out there. SuperMove has automations that respond and follow up with leads for you, even when you sleep. Don't want to do an on-site estimate? Use SuperMove's virtual survey to get all the information you need without leaving the office. Once the crew is on their way, the customer gets a live link to follow along their route, which means no more last-minute phone calls asking where their movers are. Crews can indicate when they arrive at the location, use the app to walk customers through a digital bill of lading, fill out timesheets, and automatically calculate all job expenses, including drive materials and tax. Click the promotional link in the description to schedule a SuperMove demo.
My very first job, I remember, I wasn't full-time. I was working at a supermarket, an American supermarket in Britain, in London. I'm from Ireland originally, and I moved down from the provinces, the north of England, to London, and I was working for once in my life for a company, not working for myself, and it was for a food retail company, a supermarket. Called Safeway.
Okay. Yeah.
They were an American company. They only had 2 branches, one in Scotland and one right in the heart of London, where Harrods is, the Kensington High Street. It was their flagship, really. It was their first store. I worked nights, just really shelf filling. It was the hardest work. I was only really a teenager at the time, so I was healthy and strong, but every night on the short bus ride on the way home in the morning, I would fall asleep every morning. That's how tired I was. We would physically throw these cases of food to each other along the aisles, and we'd have just emptied a 40-foot container every evening before we stopped working. So it was very physical. But I bought my van then because I was working nights, and I thought, well, I might be able to get some work during the days when I was off. I went canvassing, went calling at some businesses to see if they needed any delivery work. And one, I'd lived in Bayswater, which was quite plush, but it was like a very small apartment. And at the end of the street where I was living, in what's called a bedstead, there was an antique shop, and went in there and asked if they needed any delivery work. They took me on to deliver a couple of afternoons a week. And they specialized in brass beds, antique brass beds, which were being delivered to what's called the stockbroker belt, the wealthy areas outside London. It's where, people would live in little thatched cottages. And here am I, just a teenager, handling these beds that were bed ends, really, primarily brass beds.
And heavy too, I can imagine.
They could be quite heavy, especially the big ones, the 4-poster ones. But I became quite knowledgeable about how to erect them and everything. And the thing is that those beds then were priced at what would have cost, what a brand new built house would cost in the north of England. They were paying just for a pair of brass bed ends, these people.
Wow.
So, a different world.
Different world,
Really.
for sure. Probably still like that too, when you think about it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I've seen that you've done some work with the BBC and some major corporations out in the UK. So, I mean, you must see it all.
Oh, you've been looking at our website.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. We're not shy.
It actually made me fly. I smiled. If anybody gets a chance, and their link will be on their website. When you think of a moving company's website, of all the frustration that you get when you see fly-by-night moving companies, when you see locations being put up that they really don't have that location there. Patrick is your typical feisty business owner that lays it right on the table on this website and literally says on the website, we are not those type of people. We make sure that our service is top notch. We're not a fly by night. We're not this rogue moving company. We have a location. And I love it because it's like cut and dry for the
That's,
type of service that you want to offer.
yeah, that's very consciously doing that as well, Mark. Like you said, nowadays, I cringe when I see A to B, moving with the figure 2, and that's the name of the company, and you just know that it's Johnny come lately that's just arrived, and anyone can have a perfect website.
Well, it's easy. It's easy these days. Do you see a lot of that in the UK, in your area, in Northern England, that a lot
Oh,
of
you would.
like
I think
fly by
that's
night?
Yeah. I think it's widespread now. Your other guest that are, in fact, Dan from Foxes, he contacted me. He sent me a message straight after he appeared, and he sent me a WhatsApp message saying, "One for you, Patrick."
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the thing is, Dan's father and his grandfather were both they were the chair of the main trade association in Britain called the British Association of Removers. And although I'd never joined, I remember I met his father eventually, ironically, through a mutual friend. And it was at a birthday party. And of course, we ended up sitting next to each other. It was for a weekend, like a fancy dress thing. We were all expected to dress in period costume or something like that, as knights and that type of thing. And in conversation with Paul Fox, Dan's father, I'd known that they'd always been very keen on training. And they bought quite a few companies. They've ended up, they're really a group of companies now, Foxes. And so they did a video. In fact, they asked me to try and source them a grand piano once, I remember. And I'd never met them then. And that was so they could do a video. So when they'd buy another company, they wanted to make sure they were all singing from the same hymn book, really, that it's the method that they would work with the new teams from the new company. So they're very keen on training. And I remember the first question Paul asked me, of course, because it's like a religion, is, "Oh, Patrick, I hear you doing removal. I hear you do removals. Are you a member of the bar?" The British Association of Removers. And I had to admit, no, Paul, I'm not a member, because it's quite expensive. And in those days, it was quite exclusive as well. It was a high bar. And I said to him, we specialize in UK Ireland removals. That's all we do, really. So it's not as appropriate for us and to pay all that money to have on our website, on our lorry, on our letterhead.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think with those site associations, you really have to pick and choose what's going to maximize your return, right? There's lots of associations that I get hit with all the time to join this one and that one. And, sure, you join one, but then if you're not utilizing it, if you're not maximizing the best of it, then it becomes a problem because you're just wasting money and you're just not utilizing it as efficiently. But at the same time, you know, when you think of that type of association, it also can open the doors to a lot more work, a lot more referrals, and a lot more growth.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can see it, but and it really is like a mutual. It's not really for profit, so I can see the benefit. But because we're specialized with the UK Ireland thing, it wouldn't necessarily be as appropriate to have bar member on everything.
Sure.
But I said to
How is
Paul,
that? How is that? Oh, sorry. Go on.
but I said to Paul, I had thought of just inventing my own spurious association, and that would be maybe the Irish Removers Association, which
And did
wouldn't
you do
read
it?
BAR. It would be the Irish Removers Association member.
Sure.
So the initials would be the Irish
Oh, geez.
Removers.
The IRA. Oh, geez.
So,
Don't think that's going to go over well.
so Paul never got a recruit, and neither did I. Yeah, but he did
Yeah,
have a
I
laugh
don't.
about it. Yeah.
Oh, I
So
get it. I get it.
you could
Now,
imagine an Irish voice on the phone saying, "Are you sure you don't want to move? We've got your address." Yeah.
we got your address.
So,
We're part of the
yeah,
IRA. Don't worry about it.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
we thought better of it. But I
That's
did
funny.
say to Paul, talking about the same subject that you were mentioning, I asked Paul, considering he is so conscientious about training and everything, if you were to imagine a customer choosing one removal company rather than another, and you're trying to think of the criteria that is most important to them, in one word, what do you think the criteria would be that makes them decide to have this removal company rather than that one? What do you think, Mark?
Hi, my name's Tim Krupp. I'm the owner of Krupp Moving and Storage in Worcester, Ohio. We also have branches in Akron, Ohio and Columbus. I started my companies in 2005. In 2018, I heard about USA Home Listings, and I believe I was actually like one of their first people to actually like sign up for their program, and started doing mailers, and it completely revolutionized my business. That year we saw a 40% increase. And all the way back then, we were only doing, prior to USA Home Listings, we were doing about $1 million a year. First year with USA, we were like 1.4, and I think that was 2018. 2022, we'll do just at right about $10 million. And USA Home Listings still remains our #1 marketing source. It outperforms everything else. So if you want to elevate your business to the next level, give USA Home Listings a call, get the free trial, get started today. What are you waiting for?
I always find it's really about customer service. I mean, you can get a long way with customers when you don't have as much experience as the other person, but you lose them based on customer service, because that's kind of the industry that we're in.
Yes, that'd be repeat customers anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, they would only know how bad the service was after they'd used you. Really, but
Of course.
to get a new customer that
Yeah.
you'd never worked for, what do you think most people would guess how people decide in one word?
I mean, at least in Canada, when one is trying to find you, I mean, now with technology, they look at your website and they look at your Google reviews, so they look at those type of testimonials. But
Yeah.
you know, like I said, I really feel that from start to finish, if it's customer service at the forefront and you have trained employees, it's a win-win.
But they won't know that you have that they haven't employed you yet.
No, but they're gonna see the customer service when they pick up the phone and phone you, or they fill out a form on your website.
Yeah, yeah. If they phone you first.
Of course. So
I've got a
what is
point.
the answer?
I can't remember what Paul said. He nearly got the word that I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is the one word that really matters and that will make the difference of whether it's you or somebody else that's employed. And in my opinion, that one word is confidence.
Confidence.
It encompasses everything. If somebody phones me up and asks, or they phone somebody else, and they ask about moving from London to Dunleary, and the remover asks them, how do you spell Dunleary? They've lost the job.
Sure.
They've never been there
But
before.
that kind of wraps into, and I appreciate what you're saying about confidence. I think it all then also wraps into, like I mentioned before, about customer service. When you have someone that is answering the phone that has the knowledge, the confidence, already has experience, can answer those questions to a customer, it's a win-win.
Yeah, if you put their mind at ease, it makes a lot of difference. A lot. It's
And do you find that's something that McCrory Removals has been really strong on, like since the beginning, like to provide that type of confidence to a customer, for them to know, hey, like when you're going with us as a removal company, you're getting professional service.
yes, it's only with time, and you're still learning. You're learning every day, really. You're still learning, because any business has to evolve, constantly evolve. And like you mentioned, Mark, Google reviews. You can't really survive without such a thing, because that is the modern day word of mouth.
100%. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. You used to just be, make sure you have your advertisement in the local yellow pages or white pages, whatever your phone book that you had. You'd always want to be, the first page when they flipped to movers, you were always on the front, but that cost you a pretty dime. And then on top of that, you just wanted to make sure your trucks were presentable and your guys were clean cut because everybody saw you. And then it was just word of mouth from families and friends. And now people don't even look at that anymore. They just care about what's your star rating on Google, what does your website look like, and were was someone fast enough to book me and provide me with the best price before I move on to the next guy. So our society has totally changed to a much faster pace system than it used to be, where people would take their time and actually do some research on that moving company, or ask a friend and actually call up and want to speak to the owner. So now when you think about the last 50 years uh, and the different changes and everything else, what would you tell someone that's looking to come into the industry now? What are like some of the top 3 or top 5 tips that you would tell someone, hey, if you want to get in this industry, this is the things that you need to look out for and do?
I think, Mark, the number one word for that would be differentiate. It's not always possible to do that noticeably, but if you can try and differentiate yourself from sometimes I'll ignore that. Somebody's trying to ring me, but I'll just turn it off. Sorry about that. It's at least it goes to show. No, I'll just ask them to text me. So that just proves that we're contactable even after hours. Yeah, differentiate. You will find the established companies often. We're not one of them who would complain about the man and van operations because it's sometimes unfair competition. they cut corners or whatever. If anything, I sort of admire the smaller man and van operation, because we all had to start somewhere, and I would like to employ somebody who's been through that process of having to cope with working with a smaller vehicle, because they know how valuable space is.
Hi, I'm Mark Hershey with Salmon's Moving and Storage. Today, I want to talk about TitanUp Training. Why? Because this is Netflix-grade quality training. It's not those old videos and VHSs that you got hiding in your office somewhere. It's online, it's easy to use, they're short videos, but they get to the point. My new employees, these guys run through these training programs, there's tests at the end, and they're coming out going, oh, I'm ready to rock. So if you haven't checked out TitanUp Training yet, get a demo done. Get on board. Guess what else is there? Online portals for my sales staff. Can you believe it? These guys can learn how to overcome objections and book more leads today. So what are you waiting for? Go check out TitanUp Training today.
And maybe 2 trips is not an option, so that they're really, it's second nature to them to pack properly. But the entry is, you'll find that this is something that the bigger companies will complain, is that it's too easy to enter the removal trade. You can really just buy a second-hand van, and that's about it. But if you can differentiate yourself and you don't stick to vans, you go to lorries or trucks, heavy goods, then the game, you're then instantly competing with the upper echelons, with the companies that have large overheads. So you're not competing with man and van. So if you can differentiate yourself in that way, so heavy goods vehicles, I'm sure it's the same in Canada, Mark, that there's a lot more regulation.
But are you saying to differentiate yourself? I mean, when I hear someone saying differentiate, that to me means 2 things from what I'm getting from you. One is to have a variety from the small van to maybe a larger lorry, truck, and have the capabilities of doing a couple different ones. But when I think of differentiate, I'm thinking I'm not just going after household goods. I'm actually looking to get into delivery services. I'm looking to get into piano deliveries. I'm looking to get into commercial office removal or long distance, and have something similar to yourself that's moving, clients from England to Ireland, and that has a special service and knowledge base on that. That to me is differentiating yourself as opposed to just being another removal company.
Yeah, exactly. The more specialized, the better. And when you mentioned McCrory's, that it's not an obvious, easy name to remember or spell, but if it's somebody who's Irish and they're living in London and they're searching for a removal company, UK, Ireland, and to see the name McCrory, it's actually an advantage. Because when they ring you, they're liable to have a conversation. Oh, where are you? Are you from Donegal? Or, because names were, even in the UK, names used to be.
And how is that for transporting? Is that just taking a ferry over to Ireland? Like, are you loading your trucks on that? Like, how is that being shipped from England over?
Exactly.
And how long is that ferry ride?
It's depends on which one. Our favorite one is overnight, so it takes about 10 hours.
Wow.
Okay. But
is that one of the fastest ones, or is there a faster one?
No, they're all the same speed, but some of them go a different route.
Okay.
So it's just a
Well,
further route.
so that's a process. So you're loading one day, jumping on the ferry, taking that ferry overnight. I'm assuming there's beds there for the guys to
Oh
sleep.
yeah,
So you got to
yeah.
set that up, and then the next morning they're delivering the goods to the customer.
That would be the shortest possible.
Sure,
It could be you had a full pack, so you'd have an extra day there.
of course, of course, of
And,
course.
and you could be a long way from the ferry when you finish loading, so that could be a day out
Sure,
as well. So it could
sure.
be a bit. We can take a week sometimes.
Okay.
But there is, since, I don't know if you've ever heard the word Brexit.
Yep.
You have, yeah, because it
Sure.
wouldn't affect you. I can't take it for granted that you will. So Brexit, I suppose it means British exit would be where the word
Yeah.
came from, the exit from
Yep.
the EU.
Yep.
Since then, it's a totally different kettle of fish, if you use that expression. A
In a
different
sense, for moving.
game. Yeah, yeah. It before Brexit, which no sensible person would have ever wanted to vote for Brexit, but half the country
Sure.
did, or more than half, slightly more than half. Before Brexit, if you do a job long enough, Mark, you know it becomes routine. So when the phone rings, somebody's just going to ask, "Is that Salmon's Removals?" That's the first question they might ask. The next question might be, have you got availability, or can you give me a quote?
Of course.
And that just becomes a routine. That's what you'd expect. Since Brexit, it's different. People phone us now, and they might ask the question quite often, "Are you still doing removals to Ireland?"
Oh, I see that. Okay.
Now, that tells me that they've contacted some companies who will have said, "No, not since there's Brexit and there's customs, we don't do it anymore."
So pre-Brexit, you used to just be able to take the ferry, go over there, not an
Yes.
issue.
Yeah.
Now you
No
actually have
formalities. It's
now you actually need.
a full works now. You have to get the customer. You wouldn't believe the
So now it's like customs documents and everything else. It's like for
formalities. Yeah.
us to move somebody to the United States from
Yeah.
Canada, there's a whole
Yeah.
process now, right? There's
Yeah.
only certain guys that can go across. They have to, everybody has to be verified. There's customs documents. You have an inventory list.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff has to be sent in
The
prior
value
to
of
get
it.
approval.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to show that they are they're relinquishing their UK property permanently. So they're not just leaving temporary, and they're applying, in effect, what they're applying for is a transfer of residence, which is an exemption from having to pay any import duty. But for them to be exempt from any import duty, they have to prove that they're involved with a genuine transfer of residence and that it's permanent. So they have to show that they've got a property in Ireland that they will live in, and if they're employed, they relinquish their employment permanently in the UK, and they've got a job in Ireland, and they've got to document all this. But we actually charge a fee for us to oversee that process. So it's actually more profitable for us, believe it or not.
Sure, you've really hit a fantastic niche market that is profitable and makes you and your company a lot more unique, which is a sense of diversification that we kind of exactly. Now, I've been to London, I've been to the UK, and lots of places in Europe. Haven't been to Ireland, definitely on my bucket list, but I can only imagine that the roads, the side streets, the houses are, if anything, still as similar as they would be to some of the older houses and properties and buildings in the UK. how do you get around all of these unstable sidewalks or roads, especially when you're moving furniture and you're trying to, dolly out these items, but you can't. Are you just everybody has to carry it all the time because the roads aren't
Well,
paved? You're putting down certain type of
it's
wood or sheets.
it's not actually much worse than the UK, but there's more rural, more country properties. Customers will sometimes point out to us that, there might be difficult access to the house in Ireland that they're moving to. And we would sometimes say to them, well, if you were to tell Pickfords, I'm sure you've heard of Pickfords, have you? Yeah. If you were to tell Pickfords that you live up a boreen, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. But with McCrory's, a boreen is like a lane, like a drive, if you like, off the road.
Like a driveway, like a side
The driveway,
lane
yeah.
to the house.
Yeah, but a country back lane, So if you were to tell Pickfords that you live up a boreen, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. Whereas if you tell McCrory's, provided there's no grass growing in the center, then to us, it's a motorway. Because we're used to it. This is what we've always done. So you're gaining their confidence. You've been there before.
What is a lot of the words like removal, are there the same similar acronyms or words that you use also in Ireland when you're talking about moving, or do you have to kind of know some of the differences of? Dan shared with us a lot of the things like from Fox Moving about what you call like the back of a truck and the warehouses and everything as well too. And so I'm more curious if like in Ireland it's very similar as that, or they're different wording and terminology.
There wouldn't be very much difference in terms of the removal trade especially. There wouldn't be that much difference, but I can't hardly think. The trouble is, of course, when you're living with it, you don't notice it. It would take you to notice it, to come over here. In modern times, people have traveled that much that there isn't so much differences that they don't understand each other so much. There's some words that have actually crept into the English language that are actually Irish. But, I mean, you would use the word tail lift, wouldn't you, for the platform? Yeah, but well, there you are. So you call it a lift gate. We would say, I think a sack truck is in common
Okay.
use. A sack truck.
Yeah, no, for
Yes.
sure. Do you guys
So
have? Do you still call
it's a
ramp
trolley.
ramp? If you have a ramp on
Yeah.
the back of your truck.
So
Okay,
you see, there's
perfect.
another one
What about like a
that you
two-wheel dolly?
take.
Yeah, are they called dollies or are they called trolleys?
Oh yeah, the ramp. Trolleys. Yeah, they're a sack truck. We
Okay.
would call it trolley.
Yeah,
but
like a
people
dolly,
often
like a
call them a sack
two-wheel,
truck as well. But
like
you
push
said
cart.
dolly?
Do you guys use the same terminology?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, a dolly, they use that word, but it would be
Oh, okay.
what we'd use for a
Gotcha. Like a
piano.
piano dolly. Sure,
That
but with
would
4
be,
wheels.
that would be,
Now, but what
that'd
about
be 4 wheels.
when you're moving furniture out? Is there a certain way that
Yeah.
when you go into an older house, especially old cottage homes or old houses, like do you guys make sure things are padded along the railings, padded on the doors? Is there certain techniques in situations you've been in where this furniture is definitely not going into the new house because it's a lot smaller and you've had to do some interesting maneuvers?
Yes, we've actually, because you're into period properties, sometimes they really are, you're talking about properties that are more than 200-year-old. And I remember on one occasion, we got just about everything out, but there was one chest of drawers that would not come down the stairs. And the
course they do. Of
customer,
course they do.
she was elderly.
That's
She
right.
remembers it went up. Pickford's got it in. Well, the customer's always right. But they don't always remember things exactly as they might have been. And eventually her son turned up, and he must have been 60-year-old. And he said, "No, mother, Pickford's didn't get it up without us having to get a joiner,
Oh, okay.
a carpenter, to remove some of the
Did the same thing.
steps of the stairs." So with their permission, we removed some of the steps, and we did get it out. But you
Sure.
you just know sometimes that
Yeah, you always find out. You know,
you could scratch your head, but you think, no,
they were swearing up
this
and
never
down.
went in.
You know, this
But
couch
you can't
got moved
argue.
in. There's, this is the only way they did it. The other movers did it, and then eventually, after some time and some thought, they realized, oh no, wait a second, we actually were putting in new windows, and we actually had to go through the front window at the time. It's like, oh, okay, well, see, this is exactly what happens when you're talking about
Yeah.
these old houses. How do you deal with claims then
Yep.
when like a wall gets damaged, old wallpaper, a railing? These houses are old, and do you find there's a lot more handyman repair agents in the UK because of this situation?
Yeah.
That they're knowledgeable in handling it, or do you find that's depleting more and becoming a lot more harder when a claim is filed?
I've become aware in recent years of, I never miss the opportunity of asking customers what they do for a living. If I'm out on the vehicle, and we had one customer, again, sentenced stuff to Ireland, and they came all the way down from Aberdeen in Scotland. They hired a van to bring the furniture to us. And I asked, it was a couple, a married couple, and I asked them what they did for a living. And the wife was an interior designer, so they got this furniture restored and were sending it over to a second home in Ireland. And the husband, when I asked what he did for a living, he was a landowner. Which I thought, well, is that a career? Is that a job? But apparently they had owned the same estate in Scotland since the 1300s, forever. And I remember saying, so you must be what could be described as the aristocracy, because my impression is apparently a definition of somebody who is an aristocrat is someone who has
Where do you know that?
no furniture in their house that they've bought.
That's the definition of an aristocrat?
They've never bought any furniture. It's all inherited.
Right.
So they have this expression. Well, that's one
Sure.
I've learned.
Wow.
Which is understandable in a way, because that it's been handed down generations, and there's a sort of there's definitely a class thing in England. It's still
Happens
alive
here
and well
in America too, in Canada.
And there's a sort of expression, old money. Have you ever heard that? Yeah. Well, I think going back to your question about the claims with valuable items, I think old money people, they're not as precious about stuff
Sure.
as the more aspiring, the ones would be more new money, where they've had to work very hard to earn it, and they could lose it. So they're the ones who are more likely to, it's things they've acquired, and they see them as much more precious than somebody who takes it for granted. And
To kind of wrap this up in a bow, would you say, because McCrory has been around for 50 years, that the reputation, the word of mouth, has held strong over the generation, like over the years, whereas newer moving companies have a lot more work to do when it comes to marketing and advertising? Like, I don't think you probably, you probably don't advertise as much because people know who you are, as opposed to a newer moving company where they're trying to make a name for themselves. Do you find that's been great success for you over the years to, make sure that you're still the face of the company, that someone that's phoning up has the opportunity to speak with the owner? Do you find that's been a benefit for your success?
yes, yeah, for sure. It's the one thing that I remember you mentioned, Mark, in the past we would depend on other outlets for advertising, like the Yellow Pages. I think we're all dependent on it. And I remember, I don't know how many years ago, more than 10 years ago, the rep come round, and you know what, reps are really only interested in selling you more space. So we get past that stage, and then they ask you any changes to your advert this year. And I remember, now I should mention, Mark, you need a violin really to listen to my life story. I should mention I was brought up in the mountains in County Tyrone with no electricity, no water, no television, no telephone, nothing like that. But we didn't know we had no electricity.
Right. That was the
Nobody
normal.
told us.
That was just something that you didn't know any better.
Yes, exactly. So you're not
Totally.
deprived if you're the same as everyone else. Whereas in those same mountains, nowadays in County Tyrone, if you haven't got fast broadband, you are deprived.
Sure.
That's how much things change. And but I remember the Yellow Pages, the rep, and then when you got past the selling stage, it's like this BS. You know the expression BS. Yeah. How much would you like to earn this year? What are you going to say? As little as possible. So they get past the selling stage, and then they ask you, so any changes this year, Catry? And I remember saying, yes, that there's a few changes. I'd like, if we can, we used to have a half a page, which was £3,000 then. It was an awful lot of money.
Sure.
And you only got one shot at it, of course. You couldn't change it for the whole year. So I said, yeah, there's a few changes. One is that I'd like to have a reverse block. It was before they got color. So reverse block meant that you could have all black.
Okay.
And the lettering was yellow.
But
it
stood
didn't
out a lot
cost
more.
any more. Oh, yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to do was to, if we could have our advert read ... McCrory's Removals.
Why?
Now, do you know why that is? Because you appeared
You want to be at
alphabetically.
the top. Mm-hmm.
You are at the top.
No.
But you haven't changed your name to A1. And you can just envisage when A1 Removals
And you're at the top.
see that edition of the Yellow Pages, they'll be scratching their head, and they can't understand why somebody with M for McCrory's, but you can't even notice it. They're just small little dots.
That's the smarts of a successful
it
businessman
worked.
when he
So
has those kind of thoughts and makes those things happen, and then you see what happens. So
yeah, but
yeah,
Mark,
well,
you're talking to
sometimes you're gonna
somebody from the
learn.
mountains.
You're gonna learn little. It's like what people say they have street
You have,
smarts. You know, you had mountain smarts on making some smart choices. Totally.
you see things differently, maybe. And the other thing I asked him to do was to change the name from McCrory Removals to McCrory's. And the reason was that for the first time we had a website, and McCrory, all the versions of McCrory had already gone. McCrory.com, McCrory in America, and McCrory's, but McCrory's hadn't. We got McCrory's.co.uk, which is what we wanted. So they changed it from McCrory to McCrory's and put our website in. And the other thing I wanted to do was for the advert to read McCrory's Removals and Stories. Stories. McCrory's Removals and Stories. Because apparently, I've been told over the years that I tend to generally have a little anecdote that you try and have a conversation with a customer during the course of the removal. And I think that in the same way as you could maybe have a doctor would have a good bedside manner, that maybe the remover has a good truckside manner. If you can maybe get the customer to relax and have a conversation with them for 5 minutes during the course of the removal, and you take their mind off the stress of moving, then you're making your job a lot easier. So, and in fact, so the advert ran then. I could see him scratching his head, this rep, and he probably, because apparently these reps, they have sectors. So he would be doing all the furniture removers. And I imagine going on to the next remover and said, "Oh, I've just been with one. I think he's lifted too many pianos, that one. He's lost it. He's lost it." But before the year was out, Mark, I sent out some press releases, including the BBC. And the BBC got in touch with me. And they wanted to come out and record an article about this furniture remover who tells his customer stories. Now, that was a big chance. It was very long-sighted. But so you had the sound of the reporter paging through the yellow pages, and he came out, he wanted the sound of the lorry and everything. And he said, "Well, Patrick," and now imagine he's got his microphone and he's, driving the lorry, and I'm driving the lorry, and he's asking me questions. And, imagine, Patrick, I've had a stressful day. How would you say I would try and, calm down a little bit or something? And I said, "Well, Ian, if you notice, I'm not actually wearing a watch. So my attitude is that any job that is worth doing is worth taking your time over it. So that's one thing, is just take your time. Don't be stressed about deadlines too much." And I remember I said the parting words I said to him, "And Ian, we often say to our customers that with McCrory's, you get a free removal with every story. So we'll be sending you the bill." So what I've done there is I've tried to make the name
love
McCrory
that.
a little bit more memorable. It
Yeah.
rhymes with stories, and it's not too much.
No, for
It's not
sure.
too much of an
That's
exaggeration.
brilliant.
You know,
That's
so it's but what the thing is, Mark, the BBC are not allowed to advertise even if you pay them. But to get them to put something on as an article, you've got to almost slightly ridicule yourself and be a little humorous, and not to, if you were to try and contact and say, I would like you to do an article about McCrory's, we're the best removal company in the
yeah, of
country.
course. No,
They
it's
would just
smart. And,
yawn.
you know, it's been in those kind of conversations about how to market yourself, especially for PR, for you know, um, radio, television, to get behind the news and providing more community service and everything else. I find that's you've taken a spin on something and made it just absolutely brilliant, with you know, being able to share a story, calm a customer down, and provide moving services all at the same time. So that's great. You know, and I really appreciate you coming on today to share these stories and examples. I feel like at the end here, you're warming up. You're ready for like part two to keep talking for another hour, which is awesome. We'll have to definitely try and get you back on. But I really want to appreciate your time, Patrick. And for those that are living in England, that are looking to move over to Ireland, those that are living in Northern England as well too, in the Nottingham area, looking for some real professional removal company, definitely contact McCrory's Removals, and contact Patrick, because the guy's got a story for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I've enjoyed. I have one of my colleagues who works with me will blatantly, in front of the customers and in front
to
of
try
me,
and turn
he'll
you
do
off.
this sometime. They're like a remote
I love it.
control.
I love it.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for those that are listening, you can always tune in to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are all over, and to make sure that you can check us out. And you can also check us out online at movified.ca. And until next time, stay movified.